Imagine logging into your computer late at night, the glow of the screen casting a pale light across your room. You scroll casually through your social feed, reply to a few messages, and maybe even check a forum or two. But what if I told you that lurking behind one of those usernames could be someone who isn't just another faceless stranger? What if it was someone far more dangerous, someone watching, waiting, and manipulating with terrifying precision? Tonight, we're diving deep into the chilling tale of the internet's most elusive online predator, a phantom in the pixels who has left law enforcement baffled, survivors traumatized, and an entire digital world shaken. But here's the question I want to ask you. If such a predator exists, hidden behind a screen, how would you even know if they were talking to you right now? The story begins not with one case, but with a disturbing pattern. Over the past decade, digital disappearance reports, people vanishing after online interactions, have quietly surged. Most cases barely make the news, brushed off as runaways or people wanting to disconnect. But beneath the surface, cybersecurity experts began to notice a chilling common thread: whispers of a shadowy figure, a manipulator whose identity remained untraceable. They called him many names: the ghost, the phantom hacker, the digital demon. But one thing was clear: this wasn't an ordinary criminal. This was someone who had mastered the art of being invisible online. Unlike traditional predators who eventually leave behind clues, an IP address, a transaction, a pattern of communication, this figure didn't. Law enforcement tried the usual methods: tracing messages, monitoring suspicious accounts, checking metadata. But every time the trail went cold, almost like someone had carefully studied every investigative move and planned countermeasures in advance. Viewers, let me ask you, have you ever received a message that felt just a little too personal from someone you didn't quite know? Did it ever give you chills, even though you couldn't explain why? That unsettling feeling is exactly what survivors described. One of the earliest known cases involved a young university student who spent late nights chatting in an obscure online forum. The conversations seemed harmless at first: philosophy, life struggles, deep discussions. But slowly, the messages shifted. The stranger began asking for more personal details, always wrapped in empathy, always sounding like a trusted friend. Within weeks, the student's behavior changed. Friends noticed withdrawal, paranoia, and then the student disappeared. All that remained was a final cryptic message typed into the forum: "He found me." Now, you might be thinking, couldn't this just be an urban legend, an internet ghost story? And for a while, that's exactly what many believed. But then more cases emerged. Survivors, those lucky enough to escape, told eerily similar stories. They described a predator who knew exactly what to say to gain their trust, who used their fears against them, and who seemed to anticipate their every move. Some swore the predator manipulated them into sharing sensitive information. Others claimed he hacked into their devices to watch them in their own homes. And chillingly, every single one reported the same final pattern. Once you realized who you were talking to, it was already too late. Investigators were left shaken. This wasn't just about a predator preying on vulnerabilities. It was about someone weaponizing the very structure of the internet. He used proxies, VPN chains, disposable devices, and even hijacked innocent accounts to hide his tracks. One cybersecurity expert described him as a ghost in the machine. Every time we thought we had him, he was already somewhere else. But here's where things get even more disturbing. While law enforcement struggled to keep up, the predator seemed to evolve. Reports suggest he began using AI-generated personas, fake voices, deepfake video calls, convincing profile photos to build trust faster and deeper. Think about it for a second. If someone video called you and looked real, sounded real, how long would it take before you trusted them? Could you honestly tell the difference? By this point, it wasn't just individuals who were worried. Entire online communities began whispering about the phantom. Forums carried warnings. Don't reply to strangers who know too much. Reddit threads popped up with desperate survivors describing hauntingly similar tactics. But even with all the chatter, the predator remained invisible. No arrests, no trace, just stories. Terrifying, bone-chilling stories. And so the question remains, who was this phantom in the pixels, and how could someone maintain such perfect anonymity in an age when almost everything online is tracked? In Part 2, we'll begin to peel back the layers of his chilling modus operandi, his psychological tricks, his digital warfare tactics, and the tiny breadcrumbs he left behind. But before we go further, let me ask you, if someone offered you the answers to your deepest fears online, would you be tempted to talk back? If someone offered you the answers to your deepest fears online, would you be tempted to talk back? That temptation is exactly what the Phantom relied on. His genius, if we can call it that, wasn't in brute force hacking or flashy cyber attacks. No, it was subtler, more dangerous. He preyed on psychology, on the natural human desire to connect, to be understood. Every message he sent seemed tailor-made for the person receiving it, as if he had studied their lives for weeks before making contact. But how could one person know so much about strangers? The unsettling truth is, he didn't have to dig far. Our digital footprints, social media posts, old blogs, even comments we forget we left years ago became his weapon. He pieced together fragments, a birthday here, a complaint about a bad day there, a photo with a hidden location tag. Imagine your entire life as a puzzle scattered across the internet. All he had to do was put the pieces together. And once he did, he knew more about you than you might even know about yourself. Survivors say it felt like talking to someone who could read minds. One woman recalled, "He knew things I'd never told anyone online. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I thought maybe he was someone I knew. But the more he spoke, the more I realized this wasn't coincidence. He'd been watching me for years." Viewers, let me stop here and ask you. Do you think you could tell the difference between a caring friend and a calculated manipulator if they both messaged you today? Could you really? That's the terrifying power of social engineering. Investigators trying to unmask him began analyzing leaked chats and forum posts linked to his suspected accounts. They noticed patterns. He never used the same phrasing twice. He sprinkled in just enough spelling errors or slang to sound human, but avoided giving away a region or accent. His digital fingerprints were scrubbed clean. No metadata, no reused usernames, no repeatable identifiers. One cyber forensics specialist admitted, "It's like chasing smoke in the dark." But even smoke leaves a trace, however faint. Every so often, a breadcrumb appeared. A server ping from a random country, a login attempt that flickered on and off within seconds. Small glitches that hinted at a real person hiding behind the mask. Yet whenever they got close, the trail would vanish. Either he knew he was being tracked, or he anticipated every move in advance. What unsettled the FBI most wasn't just his elusiveness, it was his patience. Unlike impulsive criminals who act quickly, this predator could wait. Some victims reported months of grooming. He would disappear for weeks, then return with the exact right words at the exact right moment, as if he'd been silently observing in the background. That kind of restraint suggested experience, maybe even training. Was he a rogue intelligence operative, a former cybersecurity agent gone dark, or just someone with an uncanny ability to stay invisible? One case stands out. A teenage boy in Europe joined what he thought was a gaming group chat. The Phantom, disguised as another teen gamer, spent months chatting about harmless things, strategy tips, school stress, memes. Then little by little, the tone shifted.
The predator asked the boy to share more personal details, photos, then private fears, then secrets. By the time the boy realized something was wrong, the predator already had enough leverage to control him. The boy eventually broke free when his parents discovered unusual emails on his laptop. But the scars remained. He later confessed, "I wasn't scared of what he knew. I was scared of how much I trusted him." Think about that for a second. Fear not of exposure, but of betrayal. How do you recover from realizing the person you thought cared the most was just a mask for a predator?
Meanwhile, whispers began spreading in hacker forums about a ghost who was untouchable. Some admired him, others feared him. A few even tried to expose him, only to have their own systems mysteriously compromised within days. It was as if he had eyes everywhere. This fueled speculation that he wasn't working alone. Could this phantom actually be a network of predators, or was it one man clever enough to appear as many? By this stage, the story had moved beyond law enforcement. Independent cybersecurity experts, white hat hackers, and even online vigilante groups began to take interest. They wanted to hunt the phantom themselves, to do what agencies couldn't. But none succeeded. The predator seemed to be always one step ahead, adapting faster than anyone else. And yet, even phantoms cast shadows. Survivors' testimony suggested subtle similarities in his approach. He often used certain phrases when applying pressure. He had a chilling way of flipping empathy into control. He'd start with, "I understand you," then twist it into, "Only I can help you." That progression became a red flag investigators began looking for. Still, the question remained, why? Why go to such lengths to manipulate strangers online? Was it for money, blackmail, or something darker? Experts debated endlessly. Some believed he was a cyber extortionist. Others thought he sought psychological dominance, feeding on control like an addiction. And then there was the most disturbing theory, that he wasn't after anything tangible at all, that the manipulation itself was the goal. Which makes me wonder, if a predator like this doesn't want money or fame, but instead thrives on power and secrecy, how do you ever stop them? But what made this predator even more terrifying wasn't just their ability to vanish, it was their ability to adapt. Every time investigators thought they had a lead, the phantom would shift strategies, new usernames, new IP addresses, new layers of encryption. It was like chasing a ghost through an endless maze. Have you ever wondered how someone can reinvent themselves online so flawlessly that even the most advanced forensic teams can't keep up? This predator had mastered that art. Behind closed doors, law enforcement grew increasingly frustrated. Meetings stretched late into the night, whiteboards filled with connections, arrows and theories that seemed to go nowhere. Agents compared notes on patterns in online forums, trying to predict the phantom's next move. Some whispered that it felt less like chasing a criminal and more like battling a phantom intelligence, an unseen force that anticipated every countermeasure. Do you think this predator was just a single person or something bigger, maybe even an organized network hiding behind one name? And then came the most chilling revelation yet. Through leaked chats retrieved from an encrypted server, fragments of conversations painted a disturbing picture. The predator wasn't merely preying on individuals, they were manipulating entire groups, sowing distrust, breaking apart communities, leaving behind digital wreckage that lingered long after they disappeared. Imagine someone dismantling trust not just between strangers, but between friends, families, and colleagues, all from the safety of a hidden screen. Can you picture the damage that would cause in your own life? One survivor, who agreed to speak only under the alias of Maya, described the experience as psychological warfare. It began with harmless interactions, friendly chats, casual conversations, but over weeks,
It escalated into mind games that made her question reality itself. It wasn't just manipulation. It was as if they knew exactly what I feared most and used it against me. She paused, her voice trembling. I felt like my mind wasn't even my own anymore. Hearing her words forces you to wonder, what if the person you're chatting with right now isn't who they seem? Cyberpsychologists later confirmed that the Predator used sophisticated social engineering tactics, techniques designed to exploit human emotions, trust, and even loneliness. They weren't just fishing for information. They were studying their victims, learning their patterns, and pressing on their vulnerabilities like a surgeon wielding a scalpel. How can anyone defend themselves against a manipulator who knows them better than they know themselves? Meanwhile, cybersecurity experts tried to follow the Predator's breadcrumbs. Each digital trace seemed deliberate, as if designed to lead investigators down false trails. One IP address traced back to a rural home in Poland. Another pointed to a coffee shop in Brazil. A third led to an abandoned warehouse in Detroit. But when authorities checked, the locations were nothing but digital mirages. Do you think these false trails were meant to waste time, or to send the chilling message that the Predator was always one step ahead? The devastation didn't stop at the individual level. Entire online communities began to collapse under paranoia. Forums, once dedicated to support and friendship, became toxic battlegrounds of distrust. Members accused one another of being the Phantom. Friendships shattered. And through it all, the Predator remained invisible, watching as chaos spread like wildfire. Can you imagine the satisfaction someone like this might feel seeing the world unravel while they stayed safe behind their mask? Some experts began to call the Predator the Whispering Collective, believing that the scale of manipulation was too large for a single person. Was it possible that what everyone thought was one phantom was actually many working together, weaving a web of lies too complex for any one investigator to untangle? Or was that exactly what the Predator wanted people to believe, that they were more powerful, more widespread, more unstoppable than reality? By this point, the chase had escalated into a digital war. Independent vigilantes, hackers who had once worked in the shadows themselves, decided to take matters into their own hands. They launched operations to infiltrate forums, track the Predator, and unmask the face behind the screen. But every attempt failed. Accounts were deleted mid-investigation, messages evaporated like smoke, and even encrypted drives turned up empty. Whoever this Phantom was, they weren't just skilled, they were untouchable. But then one anomaly appeared. A tiny error, a single misstep. In a sea of flawless obfuscation, there was suddenly a file. Corrupted, yes, but not completely erased. Analysts spent weeks decoding it, peeling back layers of encryption until finally something emerged. A username. It wasn't much, but it was the first concrete breadcrumb in years. And yet, as soon as the name surfaced, that account disappeared from the web entirely, as if it had never existed. This raised the most haunting question yet. Was the Predator watching the investigation unfold in real time? Were they inside the very systems designed to catch them, monitoring every keystroke, every move? If so, it meant the game wasn't just hunter versus hunted. It was hunter versus something far more terrifying, a Predator who knew the hunters better than they knew themselves. And as this realization set in, one thing became chillingly clear. The Phantom wasn't just lurking in the shadows of the internet. The Phantom was already inside. The idea that the Predator might already be inside the investigation systems sent shockwaves through the task force. Imagine pouring months, even years into a case, only to realize the very tools you rely on might already be compromised. Would you even be able to trust your own team at that point? Or would every colleague, every login, every click feel like it could already belong to the Phantom? Investigators began running internal audits. Servers were stripped, rebuilt, firewalls reinforced, yet strange anomalies persisted. Encrypted files disappeared overnight. Meeting notes were altered. Logs showed logins from locations no agent had ever visited. It was as if the Predator was not just outside the system, but woven into its very fabric. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't just stay hidden, but rewrites your reality in real time? And the Predator wasn't slowing down. Survivors continued to come forward, each with stories darker than the last. One man, who spoke under the pseudonym Ethan, described how the Phantom infiltrated his professional network. At first, it seemed harmless, new connections, offers of collaboration, but soon his reputation began to unravel. Anonymous emails circulated false accusations. Clients received doctored screenshots of conversations that never happened. Within months, Ethan's career was in ruins. He whispered to investigators, "It's like they erased me without ever touching me." Can you imagine losing everything, not because of what you did, but because someone else rewrote your life from behind the keyboard? The chilling thing was this. The Predator wasn't targeting money, wasn't seeking fame, wasn't demanding ransom. They wanted something far more destructive. Control. Control over narratives, control over trust, control over identity itself. And that made them far more dangerous than any conventional cybercriminal. Because how do you negotiate with someone who doesn't want your wealth, but your very reality? Meanwhile, the white hat hackers who had joined the fight began to see this as more than just an investigation. To them, it was a digital battlefield. Teams of independent experts across continents began pooling resources, sharing intel, and tracing code fragments in hopes of cornering the Phantom. They called themselves the Lanterns, determined to bring light into the darkest corners of the web. But even they admitted, every time they lit a flame, the Phantom seemed to smother it instantly. Do you think this was a lone genius, or something larger? A shadow organization with endless resources? And then, a breakthrough. In a forum long abandoned, buried beneath years of spam, a post appeared. It was subtle, almost forgettable, but its wording mirrored patterns the Phantom had used before. The Lanterns moved fast, tracing metadata, analyzing sentence structure, even timing the post down to the millisecond. For once, it looked like they had found something real. The post originated from a small, nondescript town in Eastern Europe. Investigators rushed to verify. Could this finally be it? The first time the Phantom made a mistake that could lead to a real-world identity. But when agents arrived, the town seemed almost staged. Internet cafes with outdated equipment, old servers humming in basements, and locals who claimed they knew nothing of online predators. Yet some of their stories didn't add up. How could so many in one town be so fluent in advanced encryption terms? How could teenagers casually speak about dark web marketplaces with the ease of seasoned professionals? It left investigators with a disturbing question. Had the Predator been grooming not just individuals, but entire communities? Back online, the Predator responded in the most haunting way possible. Hours after the Eastern Europe lead leaked, a new message appeared on multiple platforms, simultaneously. The text was chillingly simple. "I am everywhere. Stop chasing shadows." The message vanished in under a minute, but not before thousands of people captured screenshots. Was it a taunt? A warning? Or proof that the Predator was indeed operating across countless nodes at once? A digital hydra that could never truly be killed. And the impact wasn't just digital anymore. Families of survivors reported strange events. Phone calls with silence on the other end, letters with no return addresses, even people watching their homes from parked cars. Was the Predator moving from the digital world into the physical? If so, the stakes had just skyrocketed. Imagine being told the predator was not just behind the screen anymore, but possibly outside your window. Would you sleep soundly again? At this point, even hardened investigators admitted fear. Some resigned from the case, citing stress, burnout, or the feeling that they were being watched. Others pressed on, convinced that if they didn't stop the predator, no one ever would. But the deeper they went, the darker it became. Every attempt to unmask the predator only seemed to tighten the predator's grip, like stepping into quicksand. And yet, through all the chaos, one chilling truth emerged. This wasn't just about one predator. This was about the future of the internet itself. If one individual or one entity could wield this much power, this much fear, without ever showing their face, what would the internet look like in 10 years? In 20 years? As the investigation pushed into uncharted territory, it became clear catching this phantom wouldn't require just skill. It would require rethinking the very foundations of digital safety. But could humanity adapt in time? Or was the phantom already too deeply embedded in our online lives? The battle was far from over, and the next move would be the most dangerous yet. The predator's message, "I am everywhere," wasn't just a taunt. For investigators, it was a declaration of war. And if you think about it, what can be more terrifying than an enemy who convinces you they're already inside every device, every network, every shadow of the digital world you depend on? Would you keep logging in? Would you trust your own phone, your own Wi-Fi, even your own fingerprints on a screen? The Lanterns doubled their efforts. Using bleeding-edge AI detection models, they combed through petabytes of data in search of repetition, a pattern, even a typo that might reveal the phantom's human side. Because no matter how flawless the predator seemed, they had to be human, or at least that's what the task force desperately hoped. But what if they weren't? What if by chasing a person, they were ignoring the possibility that the predator was something else? An AI experiment gone rogue, a collective masquerading as one voice, or even a state-backed ghost operation? Would you be able to tell the difference? Meanwhile, survivors were no longer just silent victims. They began forming their own networks, whispering stories, comparing experiences, and finding eerie similarities. One woman shared how the predator convinced her closest friend to betray her by planting fake messages and manipulating trust until she stood completely isolated. Another described hearing her own voice on audio files she had never recorded. Deepfakes, audio manipulation, digital puppetry. The predator was bending reality into a weapon. And you have to ask yourself, if you saw a video of yourself saying something you never said, how would you prove your innocence? The predator's cruelty wasn't random. Investigators began to see a theme: the destruction of trust itself. Trust between friends, between families, between communities. And once trust was shattered, chaos followed. Isn't that the most dangerous kind of predator? The one who doesn't just attack people, but dismantles the very glue holding society together? But just when it felt like the predator was untouchable, one of the Lanterns uncovered something shocking. Hidden within lines of code was an anomaly, an outdated encryption key. It wasn't much, but it was old, sloppy, almost human. For the first time, the Phantom looked fallible. Could this be the crack in the armor everyone had been waiting for? The team traced the key, narrowing it to a cluster of servers routed through blockchain relays. Hours turned into days as they followed digital trails across continents. And then, silence. Every trace, every lead vanished overnight. The servers were wiped clean. It was as if the Phantom had been watching them in real time, pulling the rug out just as they got close. Was it arrogance, or was it part of a larger plan? To let investigators believe they were close, only to remind them of how powerless they truly were. Meanwhile, strange chatter began to surface in underground forums. Users whispered about someone offering access to the Phantom, a paid service claiming to deliver direct contact. Was it real or just another scam riding on fear? Agents debated whether to engage. But here's the question. Would you take that risk? If you thought you could finally corner the Predator, would you pay to step into their world knowing it could cost you everything? The decision split the team. Some argued it was the best lead in years. Others warned it was a trap designed to lure them deeper. In the end, a small group went undercover, posing as buyers. They funneled encrypted currency through layers of anonymity until they reached their prize, a single file. Inside was a message, not coordinates, not evidence, just a line of text. You invited me in. The horror of that realization spread fast. By opening the file, they had given the Predator access, not to one device, but to the entire investigation network. The Phantom hadn't been caught. They had been unleashed. Screens across the task force flickered, displaying fragments of names, faces, and locations. Personal details of agents, investigators, even the lanterns themselves exposed in seconds. It wasn't just intimidation, it was domination. And if you were one of those agents, seeing your private life turned into ammunition against you, would you keep fighting? Or would you walk away before the Predator destroyed everything you loved? The war was no longer about catching the Phantom. It was about survival. And the clock was ticking.
The Predator had turned the hunters into prey. And in that moment, one truth became clear. This wasn't just about the internet anymore. This was psychological warfare. Every agent, every cyber expert who had sworn to bring the Phantom down now felt the Predator breathing inside their own machines, their own homes. Would you keep chasing an enemy who could flip your life upside down with a single keystroke? Or would you run, just to save what little peace you had left? But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. One of the lanterns, an old-school coder who believed every program carried the fingerprints of its maker, discovered a subtle glitch, a repeating sequence hidden deep inside the Predator's custom malware, almost invisible, but not perfect. And that's the irony, isn't it? For all the power, for all the terror, the Phantom still carried traces of being human. Because in the end, perfection doesn't exist. The lanterns built a trap, not digital this time, but psychological. They crafted bait designed to mirror the Predator's favorite trick, an irresistible target, a vulnerable victim crying out for help, designed with precision to draw the Phantom in. It was risky. If it worked, they could finally trace him back to his origin. If it failed, the Predator would know they were inside his mind and retaliate with unimaginable force. For days, nothing happened. Silence. No movement, no whisper. And then, just as hope was fading, the trap was sprung. A connection flared to life. For the first time in years, they had a location. It wasn't what they expected. Not a hidden bunker, not some exotic offshore island, just an apartment in a city where millions lived and worked every day. The Predator wasn't in the shadows. He was among us, blending in, walking past strangers on crowded sidewalks. Isn't that the most unsettling part? That the monster could be standing right next to you and you'd never know. The raid was swift. Doors kicked down, devices seized, and for a moment, everyone believed it was over. But when they opened the machines, all they found was emptiness. Wiped clean. No data, no identity, just a single message left behind glowing on the screen. You can't catch a ghost. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the Phantom was never just one person. Maybe it was a network, a movement, or even an idea too fluid to pin down. The Predator might vanish today, but someone else could wear that mask tomorrow. So the question becomes, can you ever truly kill a ghost that lives inside the wires?
Or is this battle destined to go on forever? And that brings us here, to you. Because in the end, this story isn't just about the phantom. It's about all of us. Every time you click a link without thinking, every time you trust a stranger online, every time you believe the screen in front of you more than your own instincts, you open the door. The predator doesn't need to break in. You invite them. So what do? You fight back. You stay aware. You question the too good to be true messages, the sudden friend requests, the hidden files. You talk about it with your family, your kids, your friends, because silence is the predator's strongest weapon. And most importantly, you don't let fear keep you from taking control of your digital world. Because maybe the phantom is still out there, watching this very video. Maybe they'll even see your comment below. So tell me, what would you do if the ghost in the machine suddenly knocked on your door? Would you recognize it? Would you survive it? This is Criminal Codex, and we bring you stories that don't just chill your bones, but remind you of the world we all live in. If you want more mysteries like this, secrets hidden in plain sight, predators lurking in pixels, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it so others can stay safe in the digital age. Your support helps us keep shining light into the darkest corners of crime. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones you see, they're the ones you don't.